What's going on, E39Source? It's time for an update video. So I've got the M5 here and also have a new addition. The M5 does have a new stablemate, but I'm not going to disclose just what it is yet. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, at AvisM5, you guys probably know already. But to start off, let's start with the M5. A lot has changed in my life over the past year. I actually moved, most of you know I lived in Pittsburgh, and I moved in June up to the greater Boston area. So not too much mechanically has changed with the M5 since my previous update video back in January of last year. It has the Eisenman Race exhaust, and you can actually probably see the reflection of what the other car is. I'm not going to disclose that just yet, even though it's going to be really hard to hide it. But yes, so in August of 2019, I got rid of the stock mufflers and replaced them with Eisenman Race 76 millimeter mufflers, along with deleted the resonators and replaced it with a Rogue resonated X pipe. And I think I included in my last update video a sound clip. I'll probably insert another one. I couldn't be more happy with the sound. It's honestly perfect. With the Rogue X pipe, it doesn't really drone on the highway. Yet when you really get above around 3,500 RPMs, it just screams. The Eisenman exhaust really accentuates the higher notes of the S62. Oh, you're probably seeing that wheel right there. What does that look like? Does that look like a E39 ZCP wheel? I think it does. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So this car has the 3M crystalline 40% tint, which I put on several years ago, I believe back in 2016. Avis Blue, as you all know, paint code 276. Got the Hella Euros, which I put on back in 2014, shortly after I bought the car, which is crazy. We're coming out this, I guess upcoming August is going to be 7 years. I'm running Michelin PS4Ss, which I had mounted in 2018. I'm sure you'll all remember I had Prince Wheel Services down in North Carolina refinish the Style 65s. They did a great job. The original finish was flaking and 3 of the 4 wheels were bent, so that made a pretty big difference. Eventually, probably this year, I want to get the front end resprayed. It is original paint on the hood and fenders. The bumper was replaced under my ownership back in 2015, I believe. I think it was 2015, with an OEM original bumper, a Euro part number. I did the headlight washer delete. But I would like to get the front end, the hood and fenders resprayed because they have over 20 years of highway driving and stone chips that were created from that. So they're relatively minor, not too bad for being original paint, but they are there. And I think it would definitely improve the look of the front end of the car. I've got cheap eBay 3-watt LED Angel Eye Corona ring bulbs. They're not the brightest. They look brighter on camera than they are in person, but they get the job done. This car was optioned with the Silverstone all-leather point interior. As once again, I'm sure you all know from watching previous videos, this car, the technical code for the interior is 06SS, SS for Silverstone. I replaced the steering wheel with the facelifted one back, and I'm forgetting, all the years are blurring together. I can't believe I've had this car for 6.5 years, but I believe I replaced that in 2016 with a brand new OEM facelift steering wheel that is shared with the E46 M3. We'll get to that later. But let me climb in. The interior is pretty much stock. I did replace, also in 2016, the Titan line trim with all new parts. I'm glad I did it then because it was very expensive back then. It was around $750, which seemed insane back then. But now, to source all these parts brand new, all the Titan line trim pieces, I believe last time I checked, it's about $2,700. So I'm glad I did that when it was at least somewhat affordable, even though $750 is pretty crazy for some plastic-y metalloid trim. So here we are in the driver's seat. I also, too, replaced the original back in 2015, the original 4x3 display with the facelift 16x9. Also put in a E60 545 short shifter, which I love. Also replaced all the carrier bushings along with the clutch back in 2015. Very tight, very minor play. I think if you have these cars, the E60 545 short shifter, and while you're in there, replace all the shifter carrier bushings is the definitive way to go. It retains that OEM feel, but is also a lot more precise, and it doesn't feel like you're rowing a boat when you're shifting the gears. So I'll just kind of pan around. This car has the full leather, which is somewhat rare for a sport interior car, and it was only available in North America on the 2000 model year when it was done away with, and it was standardized for 01 to 03. At least in North America, all of the luxury interiors received full leather, and all the sports received extended, which had the vinyl dash. Still incredibly nice interiors, but I do like it. It is a nice kind of plus that this car has full leather. I'll turn the ignition on, and another thing I added to this car, which I'm sure a lot of you that watch the channel are familiar with, is the blue bus. It just actually turned on. Ted did an amazing job on this module. It works pretty much like it's a factory unit. And Ryan, I know, has done a very in-depth video on the functionality of this, so I'm not going to get into that too much, but it's pretty cool. I just love these gauges. The car has 117,323 miles. I got it back in August of 2014 with just shy of 92,000. I believe it was 91,700. So now let's take a look at the back seat. So this car has the split folding rear seats. It's the one option I wish this car did not have, as they do creak a little bit and there's a little bit less rigidity because the fixed seat cars without this option have a steel plate that runs, across the car, whereas it's an open cavity on these cars. I just love the sound of these doors when they shut. It's like a bank vault. As I'm sure you noticed earlier, this car still does have the original 2000 pre-facelift taillights. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why, given that the rest of the car is facelifted, and I facelifted all of it, during my ownership, why I have not touched the original taillights. And the reason I have not, and I've debated this over the years, because I do really like the look of the facelift Celis LED taillights, is I just can't bring myself to cut into the chassis, drill into the chassis, and hammer it. And if you mess up and get the fitment wrong, there's no going back. And I've also read about people having sealing issues with sealing the light with the chassis, where water can get in and potentially fry the radio and amp in the trunk that's located in over here. Give you a little trunk tour too. Back earlier last year, I paid a ton of money for it, but I replaced this carpeting piece here. I figured may as well get it while they are still available. And then here's the, as you all know, the cavity where the nav computer, amp, a lot of the vehicle's electronics live. The 6-disc, which is currently disconnected. There's the blue bus right there. I know I need to get a proper mounting bracket for it. It's just kind of stuffed in there right now, but it's pretty secure. It's not going to fly anywhere. I've still got the C43 radio, which works fine with the blue bus. I did not upgrade to a BM53. And then I did upgrade back when I did the 16x9. I upgraded the original terrible Mark II, which actually died on my car. That was part of the reason that made me update it, sooner than I originally was going to, is the Mark II navigation computer died, but I replaced it with a Mark IV, as you can see, with the DVD logo. I don't know, we'll see if I eventually break down and install facelift LED taillights. Because it does bother my OCD that the rest of the car is facelifted except for the taillights. Though I think they look good, especially on Avis. The clear indicators look good, and I like kind of the smoked white look. But they do look dated. They definitely look especially dated when they're turned on at night. So I don't know. We'll see. If you guys want to weigh in on the comments on what I should do, should I replace them with the OEM facelift Celis taillights, or should I keep rocking the pre-facelifts? Let me know. I'd appreciate it. Thanks, guys. I also, a couple of years ago, replaced the trunk struts, so now it can actually hold the trunk up, which is nice. Small, cheap little upgrade that just makes the car, helps it feel newer. So here is the S62. It's stock on my car, apart from just a cheap Shark Conforti tune, which I added to get rid of the secondary air check engine light. And I'm now being in Boston, I'm planning on having, for those who are familiar, Bren Tuning tune the car, probably eventually at some point later this year. Yes, I know I need to replace the original yellow coolant expansion tank. I don't know why I haven't done it yet. I've had the car for 16.5 years. Ryan's given me a lot of flack, so maybe I'll get to it in 2021. We'll see. Another kind of small but interesting thing is this is a December of '99 build car. So it actually has an aluminum upper intake manifold plenum cover. It's kind of interesting. It's only the early cars, the very early, not just the 2000s, but the first half of 2000s, up to February of 2000 production cars received an aluminum plenum cover, which is very interesting. Ryan's car was right on the cutoff, being a February, and also too, his engine now is an original, but his original engine had the ABS plastic facelift, I guess you can call it, cover. But it is interesting how BMW's made these kind of small, just little changes, not really documented through the production run of these cars. The easiest way to tell if you have an aluminum plenum is to look at the edges. They're sharper than the facelifted plastic one. As far as maintenance goes, the engine's pretty much, I'm at 117,000 miles right now. Original rod bearings, but these engines are hit or miss on rod bearing consumption. My plan is by 140,000 miles, I want to get them done. One thing that I do need to do is the really annoying power steering line, not the upper ones. I replaced the upper ones, but the one that runs from the steering box to the cooler. It's going to be hard to see without light. It's deep down in there under the alternator, is leaking quite badly. And I'm actually not sure too if the cooler itself is also leaking. It's that lower line down there. Or no, I'm sorry, it's the upper line that runs into the cooler right there, is leaking pretty badly. So I'll probably replace the cooler too, but that's really the pressing thing that I see that this engine needs done. Apart from that, she's pretty mechanically sound. I do love the look of this engine, just the whole design with the intake manifold. Now, one thing too that Ryan and Kenan taught me, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it, is the air intakes. The intake tubing is not symmetrical. The left one actually sticks out a little bit more than the right to accommodate the dipstick. Again, never would have noticed it until they pointed that out, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So I guess now it's time to officially disclose what the stablemate of the M5 is. And yes, you saw it earlier on video. It is an E46 M3. So I purchased this in September of 2020, so I've only had it for a few months. They are being here in Massachusetts during the winter. It is currently early February right now. They are garaged because, as we all know, these older BMWs, when exposed to salt, they have a tendency to corrode. So now about this car. First of all, I love it. The E46 M3 was a dream of mine, and I'm still pinching myself that I'm able to own these two absolutely amazing cars. This is a 2002 model year. Despite being on the ZCP competition wheels, it is not a competition package. The competition package was introduced in 2005. I do need to get the ZCP wheels refinished. The clear coat starting to turn yellow and fade. But it is nice that the car came with genuine ZCP wheels because I really, really like the look. Also too, I want to get the front end repainted. The front bumper's pretty stone chipped up. But overall, the paint's in great shape. Not really many swirls. I told myself I would never buy a black car, and I currently own two of them right now. My daily is a 2016 Black, it's whatever, it's similar to a BMW Black Sapphire. It's black with metallic in it. I forget the Mini color, but it's a 2016 Mini Cooper Countryman S 6-speed, which is a great winter car. It's all-wheel drive. But anyway, back to the M3. Overall, apart from the stone chips, the paint's in pretty good shape though. The previous owner had the car within a year ago, paint corrected. So the paint, there's not really any swirls. I currently also have it coated with Coolite 845, topped off with bead maker. So it looks pretty good. Carbon black when clean. I have a love-hate relationship with this color, with any dark color. Avis too, it's a little bit better, but they look great when they're clean for like 10 minutes and then they're dirty again. The previous owner too also had the indicators, the side reflectors that are required by the United States Department of Transportation, the amber ones, replaced with color matched. So those look pretty good. Little things, I have a lot of plans for this car. Again, I haven't had it that long, but I've just kind of gone around and done very minor little cosmetic things. Like I said, I want to have the front end repainted. I replaced this plastic vent piece. It was pretty faded. The cowl needs to be cleaned. It's a little bit faded, but overall it is intact, so I don't think I need to replace it. The windshield's a different story. It is original. It has a lot of stone chips, including a pretty nasty one right there, as well as one of the previous owners put some really terrible tint on it. It's garbage. So one of the first things I'm gonna have done once we're in spring, back into car season, is to have the front windshield replaced. So let me walk around the car, show you what it looks like from behind. Again, being a pre-facelift in 02, one thing that I did do, one of the first things I did was I ditched the original pre-facelift taillights, which unlike the E39, I like them on the E39 M5. I really do not like the pre-facelift. I'll show you, I'll insert a picture. But what they look like, they just look super dated, and the facelift ones with the full LED array for the indicators and the running lights just look so good. So that was very easy to do on this car. They bolt right in. The only thing that was a little bit of a challenge, and it really wasn't, was just coating the LCM. This being an 02 and newer E46 M3s, the LCMs support the LEDs. If you have an 01, you have to replace the LCM with a newer version to be able to support it. But like I said, this being an 02 is very easy to coat the car, and they work great. These LEDs look really cool when they're turned on, especially at night. I love the full LED array. And I'll hit the indicators too. The indicators are so crisp. Being an E46, it suffers from just stupid little things on the car. So like the trim pieces, I need to replace this. It's starting to dry rot, the rubber. Very typical on these cars if you're familiar with the E46 Coupe. This is a little weird. This trim piece here, I don't know what happened. It almost looks like someone tried to break in, but I talked to the previous owner and he said absolutely not. Apparently they have a tendency to just to flake, and once they start going, it's just downhill from there. So the workaround is I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative, because this trim piece part right here, the part that's damaged, is no longer available. It would just be easy enough to buy a new part, and I think it's held onto the glass with adhesive. But since it's NLA, what I'm probably gonna have to do is buy a used rear quarter glass piece that has this on it, and it's like 2 bolts. You pop off the B-pillar trim, pivot this out and pull out the entire glass and just replace the glass. And I will, I guess, have to get it retinted so the tint matches, but it is an eyesore. It bothers me. Drives my OCD a little bit crazy, but we'll get to it eventually. Please excuse the car too, it's a little bit dirty. This car does have, the exhaust tips are very dirty. I need to give them a thorough cleaning. But the exhaust mufflers are Borla. They sound really good. I'll insert an exhaust clip. Another actually interesting thing too that I didn't know until shortly before or shortly after I bought the car is that the LCI coupes, the facelift coupes, received a different trunk lid. The actual trunk lid's different. On the pre-facelifts, this trim piece here just runs the entire length of the cavity for the license plate. But on the facelifts that are, the E46 facelifts kind of interesting because unlike many other BMWs in the E39, the E46 facelift happened halfway through the 2003 model year. So that's why you get people that advertise their cars, you know, they call their cars 2003.5s because that signifies that they're an 03, but they're also a facelifted. The earlier first half of the 03s are pre-facelift. So anyway, got a little off topic there. The facelift trunk lids, this trim piece actually, the whole trunk lid's completely different. To accommodate, this trim piece extends past to about here. Not exactly sure why they did that. The convertibles, the facelift convertibles retain the earlier trunk lid design, but on the coupes, maybe they did it to make the rear end look wider. Again, not entirely sure why. I actually I'm probably biased because I own a pre-facelift, but I think it looks more symmetrical and better having the trim piece end kind of in this indentation instead of extend after. It just looks a little bit less, I don't know, a little bit less finished, but to each their own. It does suffer a little bit from the classic E46 rear bumper sag. I will mess around with that. I've read some forum posts. It's not a super easy fix. It's not as simple as just messing with the guides. There's some kind of hack methods to fix that, but it's not too bad. Honestly, it doesn't really bother me. Head or taillight fitment's great. They bolt right in. Again, to facelift the E46, it's super easy. You don't have to do any modifications of the chassis. The actual physical taillight installation is super easy. I do love too, just the little details on the E46. I love this LED light bar for the third brake light. Pretty cool. I'm also, like the M5, I'm running Michelin PS4S's, which I love. The rear tires are 255/35 ZR19s. Other just small little details on the E46. I love the side vents. The E46 M3 was the first M car to incorporate the side vents, which became commonplace going forward. As well as these voluptuous side wide fenders. They look so good. And they're distinctive to the M3. They help to kind of just set it apart from the normal E46 coupe chassis. And again, as you probably all know, the E46 M3 only came in coupe form. There was no sedan, even though it was considered. Let's take a look at the interior of the car. One of the previous owners did the tint. It's pretty dark. I would guess it's 20, 25 at the most. It's in pretty decent shape, so I'm gonna keep it for now. So here's the interior. It's carbon black on black interior. Yes, it is a 6-speed. Interior leather's in very good shape. It's got the normal just bolster wrinkles, pretty commonplace on the E46. Previous owner replaced these trim pieces, so they're nice and minty. Door panels, again, in good shape. I did replace the steering wheel with a brand new OEM steering wheel. Figured I may as well buy one before they're NLA. And it just looks so good. It completely freshens the interior of the car. So let me climb in and I'll highlight some other just little things I did to the car since I got it on the interior. I do love the smell of the E46 M3 interior. Along with the E39, they have two different distinctive smells. I know it sounds weird to say, but being enthusiasts, I'm sure you guys understand. They just smell vintage. They smell good. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but yeah, it just adds to the experience. Just like the E39, I love these gauges. This era of BMW gauge design is just spot on. I like the gray background. I know the pre-facelift, the early E39 M5s received the black cluster, which looks great too, and is super rare now because most of them were replaced. But yeah, the backlighting, they look so good. I like the flat bottoms too on the gauge. Like I said, steering wheel just completely transformed the entire just kind of atmosphere of the interior, made it just feel so much newer. Previous owner got this airbag replaced under the Takata recall, so that's nice and fresh too. This car is equipped with the navigation, so it's got a Mark IV and a factory 16x9. And put the parking brake on so we don't roll backwards while I, take it out of first gear. But a couple little things that I did do on the interior. The interior, being an E46 M3, it suffers from kind of some subpar materials that do not age the best. And a lot of it is this interior central trim pieces, like the cup holders, center console, this door trim piece. It's that kind of rubberized material used in this kind of era of cars, kind of similar to like the sticky buttons on on the Ferraris and such, that just does not age well. And it just becomes scratched and it looks terrible. So one of the first things I did after getting the car is this was all chipped up, scratched up. This door actually didn't even stay closed. It was broken on the previous piece. It just looked terrible. So I replaced all of this with brand new factory parts. It looks really good. Replaced the shift knob. Also put in an E6545 shifter. Just like the E39, these cars actually share the same transmission, the JetTrag 420G, which I didn't know until shortly before buying this car. For whatever reason, I always assumed the E46 M3 had a ZF 6-speed, but it is kind of cool that it shares the JetTrag 420G with the M5. So feels pretty good. Nice and pretty short throws. And the SMG actually on this car too shares the 420G, the SMG2, unlike the SMG3 and the E60, which is completely different from the manual. The previous owner put in a dash cam, which I'm probably going to delete. I don't like where it's mounted, and it's pretty antiquated too. So maybe I'll add another one in, but I will remove that when I get the windshield replaced. Also too, I need to get the rear mirror, or the rear view mirror sent off to radar mirror because it is starting to bubble, and I don't want it to completely fail and the fluid to drip out and damage my minty new trim pieces. But also too, the other thing I like, this car being an earlier car, it has the older style oval mirror shared with the E39 M5, which I absolutely love. The Department of Transportation, for the facelifts, I believe in 04, required BMW to remove this, swap it out, get rid of it, and replace it with the more standard kind of wider mirror, which I guess functionally it works better because it has a larger viewable space. But I think the oval just looks so classic and so sporty, and it's just, I don't know. They don't build them like this anymore. So I really like the look. Do a little pan around of the interior. I believe all E46 coupes got fold down rear seats, but unlike the E39, they're implemented a lot better and they don't creak. Rear leather, I know it's really dark, is in really good shape. It looks like it wasn't really even sat in. It was a little dirty when I bought the car, but with some leather cleaner and conditioner, they cleaned up really nicely. Also have a blue bus in this car, and it works super well. It's got also too, this car has the cold weather package. It also has the Harman Kardon upgrade, so it sounds pretty good. I mean, it's not, for you audiophiles out there, it doesn't sound great. It's nothing to write home about, but for being a, 2002, it sounds pretty good. The 16x9 does suffer from the classic E46 pixel failure. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be a lot more common on the 16x9 units used on the E46 compared to the E39. My E39 is great. And I've seen E46 M3s for sale with 30,000 miles that have pixel failure. So there's services that can repair it, or I might just buy a display. I looked earlier and I couldn't find them on eBay. They used to be pretty easy to find. So, or if someone's just selling a whole new unit, or a used new unit, I'll probably replace it. But bit of an eyesore, very common on these cars, and I plan on getting that taken care of sooner rather than later. So now let's take a look at the engine bay. So here is the awesome S54B32. This engine is pretty amazing. I absolutely love it. It gives, I'm sorry, you E39 M5 fans, it definitely gives the S62 a run for its money. It's just this engine has so much character. When it came out, it was one of the few production engines, especially for its price point, that surpassed the iconic 100 horsepower per liter, creating 343 brake horsepower with a 3.2 liter unit, which is pretty cool. The engine is pretty much all stock except for a K&N air intake, which I plan on getting rid of and replacing with a replica CSL airbox. Probably the E-Venturi one, which is stupidly expensive. So we'll see when I pony up for that. But you just have to have that induction sound with the, this S54 with the CSL airbox. Just sounds so good. It sounds great stock, and it sounds even good with this K&N, but the CSL airbox just puts it on a completely different level. Part of the reason why I bought this car is it had a lot of the S54 has some pain points, including Vanos, and this car has had a lot of the E46 pain points addressed, including it had the Bijan Systems Vanos anti-rattle kit installed, as well as the subframe. Actually, the big thing is the subframe has been reinforced on this car just preventatively. There were no cracks. So given that this car has about 70,000 miles, it should be good for the foreseeable future. It was reinforced with a AKG kit. And I do plan on tracking this car, so that was part of the reason why I bought this car. Is it's nice having peace of mind and not having to take care of that. Also, too, the later E46 M3s received this factory strut brace. Being an O2, I don't think this car may or may not, I need to read up a little bit on it more, received it from the factory, but I know BMW retrofitted them under warranty to a lot of these cars. This car also, too, being an O2, the S54 had the rod bearing recall done. Again, the car sits at 70,000 miles. The rod bearings were done at around 30,000 under the recall. So there's about 40,000 on these rod bearings. The S54 does have a tendency to chew through rod bearings, not quite like the S85 or S65. And I actually read this crazy story about just recently a 340,000 mile 01 E46 M3 original engine on original rod bearings, supposedly, which is insane. I mean, that's just crazy, living on borrowed time. But I plan on getting them done when the rod bearings hit 70,000 miles. So probably in another 35,000 miles, I'll get the rod bearings done. It also has a fresh valve cover gasket because that was leaking. That was actually something that plagued the car right after I got it. Bought this car in Orlando, Florida, and my buddy Jeff, who is also on E39Source, we flew down in September and road tripped back up to Boston. All said and done, we took some detours, visited some family. It was a great trip. It was about 1,400 miles. And when I got back, the car was leaking oil. And it turned out that the valve cover was leaking quite badly. So mechanic here took care of that. And she's been good to go. This car's been an absolute blast. I love this car. Just the chassis dynamics. The E46 is such a playful car. And just the word that sums it up is balance. The S54 and the E46 M3 chassis are perfectly mated. It's not an underpowered car, even though the internet will lead you to believe otherwise, but it's also far from overpowered. I mean, it doesn't feel stupidly fast by today's standards. I mean, the M5's a lot faster, especially at highway speeds. But the way, just the character this engine has, this car has, revving it up to 8,000 RPMs, it's an absolute blast. If you have never experienced an E46 M3, try to find a friend or find someone you know that has one and drive one, or at least ride in one. I forgot to mention too, this car has the previous owner recently got rid of the stock headers and replaced them with Fab Speeds. So also gonna have Bren tune this car and take advantage of those headers. And I'll insert a sound clip. This car just sounds insane above about 5,000 RPMs. It kind of gets this V12 exotic wail to it, and it's just so addicting. I also did some very easy, just small little things like replace this front throttle position sensor just because, and the MAF. Just simple little stuff. I just love the design of this engine though. You can see the individual throttle bodies and the fuel rails. I love how exposed it is. This engine's just sweet. I love you too, S62, but I have a new soft spot for the S54. So that is all for now, E39Source. I figured I would give you an update on the M5 and also let you know of the new addition. Again, still pinching myself that I own both of these cars. This era of BMW is just simply the best. Again, I'm biased, Not all may agree, but I'm sure a lot of you guys watching agree. And I just feel so fortunate to be able to own both of them. So take care. This car is going to be getting a lot this year. Also this one, my wallet is going to be hurting. But stay tuned. I'll be making some more videos, and thanks for watching. Take care.